Hello, welcome to Evangelistic Apologetics. This is an introduction to systematic Christian worldview. We are in part 1, the truth of truth and the theory of creation. And in this section, we are talking about the approaches to truth. Okay, we have defined truth as the accurate reflection of the objective world in the subjective world. Okay, so you go from reality to truth. Okay, you go through a set of means. There are 3 sections in the reality: the natural, human, and supernatural world. And because of the ways to know them, sometimes we call them the phenomenological layer of reality, and that's nature. And because that comes from the word phenomenon. It's a surface. You observe, you touch through your senses. Okay, you see, you hear, you touch. That you only get the phenomenon. Okay, but what is the noumenon? Noumenon, that means the reality, the deeper being behind it. They are invisible. They are untouchable. You have to use your reason, sometimes faith, to get to there. So how to get from the phenomenon to noumenon? That's it's a effort. Okay, and in order to know these 3 worlds, we need to go through 3 means: experience or senses, reason or thinking, and faith or belief. And then we reach the science, philosophy, and theology. Those are the rational side of man. Or if you go to the emotional or heart part of man, you can have art and culture and religion. That's the other side of man. So you can see there's one reality. Okay, and then it goes through the means, and if you go through the mind, it goes to theology, philosophy, science. It goes to the heart, it goes to religion, culture, and art. Okay, so it's 2 ways of reflection. But either way, truth is something that reflects the reality accurately. Okay, either through mind or through heart. But mostly we're talking about the mind, the rational side. That's why we use truth. Okay, but the heart side, there's an issue of truth too. Okay, so these are the ways to reach truth. And if you go deeper into how to find the truth, okay, we have found out what is the attributes of truth in our last section, and what are the standards of truth. Okay, and when we will go on now to find out the details of each of the branches, and then we will evaluate them with the standard of truth. Then we can find out whether they are true. Okay, so to find out approximations or something that as an approach to reach truth, in each of these layers you go to details. And in the lower part we have the pro, pre, post, and the para science. And in the middle we have realism, materialism, and idealism. And in the upper part we have inspired faith versus superstition. So we will deal with them from bottom up as our approach. We are trying to reach the correct faith and trying to introduce it to people who are not in it yet. So we start from the bottom. Okay, the attributes of truth are its correspondent in the lowest layer. It fits facts. Okay, it is a connective. In the middle layer, in the rational part, it fits logic, and in the top, in the faith layer, it will fit scripture. But we will not use the top layer. We'll use this bottom too. Okay, so now we are going from bottom to top again. Science. Okay, there are so many things, so many theories, so many schools of thoughts claim to be science, but many of them do not possess much truth. Okay, so how can you determine what is really in the so-called science? Okay, and you will have to evaluate these sciences and to see their nature and see them in their ways of development, where they are, and how close they have approached to truth, or are they still remaining very far. They are intellectual steps, but they may remain very far from truth. So how do you do that? Well, you have to see how people think. Okay, we human beings have been given the ability of logical thinking. Okay, that distinguishes human beings from the animals. Okay, and when we do logical thinking, we first observe things. Okay, we observe. We have the senses, right? We have the eyes, the ears, and the hands that touch, and so on. Our senses, 5 senses. Somebody have 6, but we use our senses to observe the world. And then by your observation of this diverse world, you try to summarize some general principles. Okay, and that's called induction. Okay, from the specifics to the general, from the individual and to the general. Okay, to the one that covers more, to the universal. Okay, and when you do that, that is called induction. But once you have this inducted theory or propositions, you have to verify whether they are true. They may not be true. Okay, and if in the specific situation they are true, but once you make it general, they may not be true. Okay, and then you have to verify them. Okay, when you can verify them, then this theory becomes, if not proven, at least affirmed. Okay, and your faith on that theory increase. Okay, and then if it can be applied, if it has been proven, if it can be applied to something, then that's deduction, to a special situation. Then you apply that, then that, if it's true, then it becomes something useful for human beings. And from that, you go back to the new observation. If you find there is discrepancies, then you're trying to modify the proposition, and you progress in your understanding. You see, and you go this cycle and go on and on and on. That's how human beings think. You use induction and deduction. You observe, you theorize, you verify, and you modify. You see, that's generally how human beings think. Okay? And because that is a general pattern, then we can classify the sciences, the so-called sciences, which are not all truth. Okay? And we need to know their nature and be able to classify them and determine our proper level of faith in these theories. Okay, so now I will propose a way of classification of sciences. That's this new chart I have written on the board now. So when we simply using our senses and observe the world, and we will summarize things, and such as, let's say, Linnaeus of classification of living beings, and he divided into the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, and then you have the phylum, and you have the family, and you have species, and so on and so on. Those things are observation. Okay, they are nothing but observation of the fact and the record of the facts. Okay, and these remain pre-science. Okay, are they scientific? Yeah, it's observing the world. That's part of science. But how much universal theory is there? Well, there's maybe some, but it's not definite. It has not been verified yet. So our Linnaeus division of the phylums and the families and the species, are they absolute? No. Okay, so you make it properly classified. It's pre-science. Okay, they are useful, but they're not definite and final. Okay, and you can change them, modify them, and improve your understanding of them. Okay, so that's pre-science, and in that sense, the theory of evolution is also a pre-science. Okay, or what I would call the macro theory of evolution. It's a pre-science because it's an observation of the world. Charles Darwin observed that certain species on the mainland and versus the similar one on the islands, he observed the differences. And he proposed a theory of evolution. He says that these people evolved, these species evolved by themselves because of a certain mechanism that he proposed, the survival of the fittest. Okay, so the natural selection. And this is a pre-science. He went beyond the Linnaeus observation and classification. He went on to propose a theory. Okay, remember the theory of the survival of the fittest or the natural selection is a theory, and it has never been verified because it cannot be, because the definition is cyclical. So what is the fittest? The fittest is what survived. So what survived? Well, the fittest survived. So you see there's a cyclical definition. Okay? The survived are the fittest are the survived. So it's like two people saying, I say you're a saint, you say I'm a saint, so we are all saints. Well, that's not necessarily true. You must have some verification outside of this internal definition of each other. Okay, so we have to recognize macro theory of evolution is similar to Linnaeus classification of living beings. And they remain on pre-science. Then what is pro-science? Okay, pro-science is something that can be verified by experiments. Okay, if in the areas of like physics, okay, like chemistry, like medicine, most of medicine, somewhere in medicine it can't be observed. Even theoretically speaking, if you want to observe a live heart, you have to insert something in the live heart, and then the heart is not its original with that scope there. So in a sense, there are certain things in medicine that is unreachable, but you can approximate. Okay. So anyway, pro-science is something related with verifiable, experimentally doable things. Okay. For repeatable events. Okay. Things, if they are repeatable, okay, you observe certain things, then you propose a theory, and other people independent from you, if they can repeat the same event and verify it, then it the theory become affirmed. Okay, and in some cases we may say it's proven, but since usually the things that are meaningful are about very wide range things, you cannot select every area. You can only selectively experiment, and in that case you can only say affirm, and your faith in the theory increases, but you have to stay from proven. You stay away from proven. But anyway, pure science are those that for the repeatable event. So what about the science of the origin, about the origin of the world? How about the beginning appearance of life? Can you relive the time of the beginning of the world? Can you go back to a time where there's no life? Well, you are alive. If you're there, it's not that time, right? So that is not repeatable. So therefore, that's why we say macro theory of evolution must be regarded as a pre-science, but not pro-science, because that it cannot be repeated. It cannot be experimentally verified. Okay? How about the Big Bang theory? Okay? Big Bang theory is based on certain observation of the world, that the stars are leaving us. And if you retract, and it seems to come back to one point in the beginning, and that's Big Bang. However, that's the evidence. From the evidence you summarize a theory, and that's pre-science. However, can you verify it by experiments? Well, you can't. Okay, there may be a few theories that, few predictions from this, such as the universal, the background radiation of the universe. Well, if that is a prediction of the theory, and then you can verify it, that affirms the theory, but it remains from being proven. However, when you observe the universal background radiation, you also bring a problem. The problem is, how can they thermally communicate? You know, if the universe is so big, there's not enough time for them to thermally communicate. You know, it takes time for the molecules to collide with one another in this room so that they are uniform in this room. But if there's no communication, not even time to collide, the molecules may not be uniform. They may stay in one place if it starts there. So actually, the so-called verification of the Big Bang theory by the universal background radiation is also its own stumbling block. It also disproves it. So we need to be careful for theory of what it is. Okay, you regard them as what they are in nature. The pro-sciences remain in very limited branches of science. Okay, physics, chemistry, part of medicine, and so on. Okay, and there the theories can be proven correct. And once the theories are proven correct, then when you apply the theories, you become a technology. You know, you have technology, and the technology will benefit people. So what we have is a pre-science become pro-science. And from pro-science, you can extract concepts that are universal. And such as, let's say, theory of relativity is part of the pro-science. But from the theory of relativity, it supports the idea of relative space-time, rather than absolute space-time. You see, the old science of Newtonian physics supports the concept of absolute space-time, where space and time are independent, unrelated, uniform, not changing, and so on, so on. So that's the absolute space-time, infinite. Okay, but they have been proven false, because on the Newtonian physics, when it's approaching high speed or small scale to the scale of Planck's constant, then they fail. You know, it fails. The Newtonian physics fails. So you have to develop science into the theory of relativity and the quantum mechanics. And the relativity supports the relative space-time. That means space and time are linked together. They can change, they can be stretched or shrunk, and they are finite. Okay, so that is the worldview that the new science of theory of relativity supports. And if people still keep the old worldview of absolute space-time, infinite time for the universe, therefore it could be God itself. And that is very antiquated. That is due to ignorance or stubbornness. Either way, you choose. Okay, and people who have followed up with science must adapt their worldview according to the best evidences of the newest science if they want to claim to be scientific and rational. And the newest science supports the relative space-time. Okay, and the relative space-time supports the Big Bang theory because it has finiteness to space and time. Okay, and if you have Big Bang, then you have a beginning of the universe. Then there's a question: what happens before the beginning? Okay, and it's a natural thing. You live in time, you naturally think in time. People might object. Okay, there is no time before the beginning. True, but how do you know? Again, you don't know, right? It's a natural extrapolation for us to live in time to say what is before time. Okay? And it leads to the first argument for the existence of God. that things that have beginning seem to have creators. And the universe has a beginning, therefore it has a creator. Okay, so that's the post-science cosmology. Okay, the Big Bang theory. They may be development of the pro-science, but they are post-science because a Big Bang theory cannot be verified by experiments. And what has been verified, like the universal background information, is also its own grave digger, because there's not enough time for the communication to reach that universal evenness of the temperature. Okay, so it is not a support, it's actually also a disproof. So in that case, cosmology, Big Bang theory must be regarded as post-science. But so they are not pro-science, they're not absolute, and you cannot claim it as absolute truth. Okay, you can only say right now that's the best knowledge we have. However, we are open-minded on here. Okay, now post-sciences give us ideas like, let's say, the new idea of space and time. Okay, and then we go back to pre-science. We observe the world. Okay, and we can do some experiments and that measure the life of certain fundamental particles, and they do verify the theory of evolution. So not evolution, theory of relativity. Okay, and this cycle, okay, from pre-science to pro-science, from pro-science to post-science, and from post-science back to pre-science, and circular, and it may be viewed as helical, going up and up. That's the progress of science. Okay? Science always remains open. At any time you take a picture of science now, it is a snapshot of a flow. Science never reaches a final state. Okay? It's always a flow. You know, a certain branch, it may reach this maturity, but it still has room to improve. Sometimes it's just small room, but it's still a flow. It's never stale. Okay? It's never final. And that's real science. So the true science are here. There may be approximations, and there are absolutes, there are truths, but they are true. Okay? These are truths. And they are the true sciences. But on the other side, there are falsehood. Okay? The falsehood could be imagined, and that is harmless. But if you have intentional telling of falsehood, that becomes a lie. Okay? So we have imagination, we have lies in the falsehood. And what could they be? Well, pre-science. If it's not proven, but people claim it to be absolute. Now what do we have? We have, let's say, macro theory of evolution. That's a pre-science. If people make that a worldview, and that's making it a final thing, okay, rather than a progressive thing. Okay, once you make it as a final thing to hold on to and into an ideology, then you have went into parascience. Okay, and the parascience is you go in, you never go out. See, also like the theory of cosmology, like a Big Bang theory, if you make that absolute, and then you build your worldview because of that, and like, let's say, Stephen Hawking, and he knew that the Big Bang theory will force people to believe in God, and he doesn't want to, so he started to imagine that time could become virtue in its beginning. Right now we know time is a real time, okay, it's a real number, but he imagined in the beginning somehow time would turn into a virtue number, imaginary number, or rather imaginary number with an I, you know, square root minus 1 before it. And if that's the case, then the beginning does not require God. It will self-produce. But the question is, how do you know at that time turned into imaginary number? Okay? Again, it is something that you imagine in order to affirm something that you already believe, that there must not be a God. So there must not be a beginning. And these things, again, are imagined for a convicted worldview. And that is just not scientific. Okay, so what we have is that the pre-sciences and the post-sciences, once they get into parascience, what we get are false religions and ideologies. Okay, so this is a dead end. Okay, we have, let's say, historical materialism. That's Marxism. That's also an ideology. He may got it from observing nature or society, history, according to seeing through the lens of Hegel's dialecticism. But once he observed that, and then he made it into a worldview. Some Chinese consider Qigong or Indian yoga, or they all claim to be sciences, okay? But they are really ideologies, and they made it up. And there may be certain truth, but there are a lot of untruth in there. And the problem is it cannot be verified, okay? So that's parascience. They have a scientific look or facade, but no scientific content. Okay, so we need to watch out. Okay, we need to support the pro-science, be cautious about the pre-science and the post-science, and avoid the parascience. Okay, we have data and theory in the pre-science. We have pure science, which is just trying to verify theories. We don't care about the result. That's pure science. And we have technology in the pro-science. Then we have the philosophy or ontology, things on what things really are, like space, time, matter, energy, and order. Those are the basic concepts of physics, and they also philosophical concepts. That's post-science. And if you go back to pre-science, that's okay. That's true science. But if you go into parascience, you will have false religion, and you have ideology. So what we get on this side, they are either imagination or lies. Imaginations are harmless lies. Lies are harmful imaginations. Okay, but anyway, they are all not good. But on the other hand, the truth is good. Approximation is also good. Sometimes truths are evasive. You cannot get there in one step, but you can go through steps. You can approach it. And with these steps, we will approach the true science. Okay? And I think we ran out of time. Next time we can finish this by going into higher levels. Okay? And anyway, we are trying to approach the truth in the upper level. We start from the bottom, we go up. We be careful in what we study, but we are open-minded. Okay? You must have both openness of your mind and cautiousness in your evaluation of theories. And if you have both, then you are a true thinker. If you miss one, then there's something wrong. So let's have both. Amen.